Hi and welcome back. In this video we're going to be implementing our Milestone Project 2 using our in-memory database, which is a Python list. I really hope you did give it a go following the project brief and you tried to implement this project on your own, and hopefully you succeeded and made it work. You can always ask questions in the course Q&A if you need help with anything specific before moving on. But now that you're here, let's go and implement this project using lists as our in-memory database. Of course, the first thing we'll do is define the user interface so that the user can interact with our program, and then we can add functionality little by little. The first thing we've got is we ask the user to enter their choice. That's A, L, R, D, or Q. If they enter Q, we're not going to go into this loop. So in here, we have to deal with 4 options. If the user input is A, if the user input is L, if the user input is R, and if the user input is D. And if it's none of them, we can print unknown command, please try again. Okay. Now, of course, in order to go back to the top of the loop with a different user input, we must reset the user input to something else. For that, we're going to ask the user again, but make sure that that's not inside the else or anywhere, just here within the loop outside of any of these statements. I also gave you a few hints of what you could call your functions, so I'm just going to use those names here. So I'm going to call prompt add book, the function that doesn't exist yet, when they type A. We're going to call list books when they type L, prompt read book when they type R, and prompt delete book when they type D. The reason why these functions have prompt in front of them is because these functions aren't just going to do things, they're also going to ask the user for something, and that's just my way of telling myself, these functions are going to ask the user, and they have to ask the user for some information in order to do what they want to do. If you want to add a book, you have to ask the user for the name and author. If you want to read a book, you have to ask the user at least for the name. And if you want to delete a book, you also have to ask at least for the name. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement our functions. Python styling suggests we leave 2 blank lines between 2 functions, so we're going to do just that. And then we're going to define our prompt add book function. What this is going to do is ask the user for name and author. So name and the author. And then all it's going to do is ask the database to save this book. Notice how it's not going to interact with the books list directly, but it's going to ask the database to save the book to the list. So what to do here is say database.addBook, name and author. Now when we call this, we pass the value of name, a string, and the value of author, another string, to our addBook function. And this is now going to use this global variable to append this dictionary, which represents our book. It has a name, an author, and a red status, which starts off as false. We're going to be able to change this later on. Okay. Now we can delete our first comment, for we've already accomplished it. Once again, leaving 2 lines, we can say list books. And the list books is just going to ask the database for all the books. And it's going to print them off one by one. So for book in books, we're going to print some representation of the book. We can do that later. For right now, we're just going to print the dictionary that will come back. Remember, we're storing dictionaries. Dictionaries are going to come back. The getAllBooks function does not exist, so we're going to create it in the database. And what should this function do? Well, in order to get all the books, all it has to do is return this list here that will contain all our books. So just return books will do. When we step up this program and work with files, this is going to get more complicated, of course. It's going to have to actually open a file and read the contents. And certainly when we move on to databases, it's going to get even more complicated, as we will have to connect to the database and retrieve the data. But for now, because we're using a simple in-memory database, we can just return the books there. Now we can delete our list books comment there since we've already implemented it. Let's move on to prompt read book. And this has to ask for the book name and then go to the database and change it to read. So, name. Enter the name of the book you just finished reading. And then all we want to do is say database mark book as read with that name. Of course, this function does not exist, so we have to go over to our database.py and define that. Mark book as read. And it is given a name. This parameter here will receive the string that the user entered, and that should be the name of the book. So